back to another video. This is where we left off in the last one. Everything torn down, engine apart. All the parts have come in ready to rebuild this little motor, so while the other things are off for painting, the orange bits, thought I'd get started on this engine rebuild. Since I was going to be rebuilding and spending a bit of time on the internal stuff, I thought I'd get the other bits that needed painting outside. Nice sunny day today, so started getting some black paint on the bits so they could dry while I was working on the internals of the motor. Used a couple of different paints, a high heat enamel for the engine parts that are going to get hot obviously, and it's more fuel resistant as well, so that'll help long term keeping things looking good. Used a cheaper paint on the flywheel, still an enamel, but yeah, it's not going to get hot, so I didn't need the same level of protection. That's the oil bath there, same thing. Had some silver enamel left over, so I did the little engine shroud, what do you call it, mesh there, silver. This is just a first coat, so it still looks a little bit funky from the underneath surface, but give that a bit of a sand down and comes up nice in the end. I do have a little hiccup part way through with the painting process, so you'll see that when we get to it. But everything was looking good, nice sunny day, so that gave it a really good chance to dry out properly. I've had issues in the past with paint taking far too long. Had a bolt through the cylinder head spark plug hole. So yeah, back inside to this engine, so that's the side cover there. Managed to get the gasket off and keep the gasket really nice so I can reuse that. I didn't buy a new gasket set, so just yeah, that came off real clean. Gave it a good wipe down, got the oil and stuff off it, ready to reseal that when I put it back together. I'd already put the oil seals in at this stage. I did that earlier on, I think even before I filmed the last video. So I had the oil seals ordered in. They came from a place in Invercargill called SES Direct. So the oil seal original part number was 299819. Used two of those, one for each side. Had the crankshaft out to put that one in, couldn't really get it in with it in there, so yeah, cam and crank came out, tapped that oil seal back in. I just sat the shaft back in there, need it back in place to put the piston and conrod back in, so those worked out well. When I came to putting the conrod back in, I decided it was going to be easier with that cam gear out of the road, so earlier on I'd put a mark in there. See, one tooth on that main crank is painted and there's a little divot or a little drill mark in the cam gear, so I made sure when I lined it up I painted that one tooth so I knew exactly where to put that back together and get the engine timed properly for the valves. Pulling that cam out, the little tappets or little push rods, see one just dropped there, got that out of the way, and that just gave me a lot more space to redo the bolts when I put that cap on the bottom of the conrod. So just get those out and set them out of the road and keep them nice and safe. Everything inside was fine. Here's a little look at the piston ring. So I ordered that new ring set. The original part number is 294232 if you need to order those. Came with a little diagram of which way up the rings go and which goes where and all that sort of thing, so that's really handy. Did a comparison and it was amazing the difference in these rings, those old ones, and just how worn they were. I figured that was the problem, but I just sort of overlay each ring on top of each other and you get to see the difference in how much wear and how much has gone from the old rings. You can see the thickness of them, well, not the thickness, but the width, I guess, in that diameter, the springiness of them, just checking the tension, all that sort of stuff. So you can see how easy that old one is to press together versus how hard the newer one is. I think that was the top ring that I did there. This is the middle one. This is the most obvious of how much is worn down. You'll see the size difference there, you know, just how much meat has gone off that ring, especially on that one end. Putting them over the top of each other, you can see an obvious difference in them. The oiler ring, when I get to that one, the third one, that wasn't quite so bad. Still wear to it, and it's more the tension in that oiler ring that you notice the most. So yeah, not too much of a difference there, just mainly in that springiness and the tension. So I did sit them inside the bore. I'll show you the old one versus the new one for a comparison. That's the ring gap when the old oiler ring, I used the oiler ring, it's the fattest and the easiest to see. And this is the new one, so that's the clearance it should have. That's back to factory spec with a feeler gauge, so that's what it's supposed to look like. So I got them put onto the piston itself. I don't have a ring compressor, so I use a hose clamp. I think I showed you that at the end of the last video. I just put a hose clamp over the top and oil it all up, like lots of SAE 30. I only use mineral SAE 30 oil in these old engines. Lots of oil around there, makes them slide into the bore quite easy. I've done this a couple of times with other motors too, so get that wound, get that on, and then just wind the hose clamp onto the piston rings. Not too tight, just firm enough to make sure that they're going to go down inside there. You don't want to over tighten this, or it'll bind up on the rings and damage the rings as they go down. So I just sort of go hand tight, really check, make sure everything's looking square as well, because it's quite easy to get this off to one side and it'll catch on one ring as it goes down. So that's why I only use that screwdriver handle. I don't put a ratchet or a bar or anything like that. Don't want to over tighten it. Get it all nice and square, just firmed up, just like that. Pretty good. And then throw a rag over the top and give it a few taps with a hammer, and that should just slide back down in there. Lots of oil, that's the most important thing with doing this, I guess, was putting lots of oil around there, oil inside the bore, oil around those rings. And then, yeah, a few gentle taps, it just sort of drops in, the oiler ring goes in first. I did just pull this off just to make sure everything was still looking flat and straight, square. So far so good. A little bit of an extra tweak just to make sure those top rings aren't sort of loose and sitting in the top of the bore. And then a couple of taps and it just dropped straight in and went all the way to the bottom. So that was pretty easy. Flipped it over and just had to line up the con rod onto the crank, and got the bottom cap to screw back on. The bottom cap's an interesting little assembly. Has a little retainer type clip that you punch sideways and lock over the top of those two bolts once they're in, and it stops the bolts coming undone. Also includes the oil dipper on the bottom as well that splashes around inside the case. So I gave that a real good clean up, didn't want to leave any junk in there, and again just oiled it up, a little bit of oil on my finger and oiled up to make sure that that's all good just for assembly. So it was a bit of a pain getting my hands in there. I did this off camera, got that back in, screwed up. The camera was just sort of getting in the way, so it was easier to move the camera back and just get the job done. So with that back in, you might spot something in here. If someone wants to leave a comment, if they can see what's not right in there, I did have to take things apart and redo them. But if you can spot what's wrong there, just leave me a comment. It'd be interesting to see how astute your vision is and see what you can see that I can't. But anyways, I threw this pulley on here just to give me a little bit of an extra hand grip. Things were oily and slippery, and just getting that to turn. So got it to turn, spun it up and down a couple of times just inside the bore there, see all the oil running out everywhere. So that was all good. And then it was time to, I suppose, put the valves back in and get everything sorted in there. Plenty of oil running around, well lubed up. So had the cam in. I hadn't put the valves in at this stage actually, that's right. So yeah, we got that side cover sealed up. I used a little bit of a silicone sealant. It's a special gasket sealant. Very thin layer. Just put a little layer on that case, right around the outside edge, and just smoothed it flat with my finger. It didn't need to be thick at all. If it was overly thick, it would change, I guess, the overall dimension and where the crank ran. So just the tiniest little bit, just to take up any little gaps or any imperfections in that casting, since I'm reusing the old gasket. So I did the same thing on the opposite side. So this is for what's going to go onto the main part of the block, or the case that you see there. So I just ran the bit on the gasket itself, bit of newspaper down so I didn't get too messy. Exactly the same deal, just a really fine thin layer, and smoothed that out with my finger as well. So once that was nice and smooth, there's two ways of doing this. I could have put the gasket straight on and used the little dowels on the case to hold the gasket in place, but I chose the opposite way and oiled up the end of that crank just to keep that seal, and I put the seal on, and a little bit around the oil seal itself on the side cover. Just being that it was brand new rubber, I didn't want to burn that up the first time I started it by having it dry if the oil didn't splash up there straight away. So as I was saying, I just grabbed the gasket. I could have flipped it and set it straight onto the main part of the motor, but I decided to put it onto the cover side and used a couple of bolts, put 2 of the bolts through the holes, and that just held the gasket in place while I dropped it over the shaft. When I was putting the side cover on, you've got to be a bit careful. It has to line up to the dowels, got to get the oil seal through properly on the crank, and also that cam, there's a little hole, if you like, where the cam gear has to run into. So slide it on very, very gentle, very careful, line up the dowels and just drop it into place. So it just pops onto the dowels there, and I think it needed a little bit of a wiggle around to make sure that cam went in. Finger tight with the bolts to start with, all 6 of them, and got them all down snug, nice and even. Once to pull the pressure and even, just like doing a cylinder head, I guess you move around at them from diagonals, and there's probably a proper spec and a proper order to do these, but just got them in, dropped the cover on, and then just tweaked them up, snugged them down. They don't need to be over tight. Snugged them down. And then it was on to the bottom, just having a look around the bottom there, making sure that silicone has squeezed out, or that sealant, gasket sealant. Run the finger along there just to get rid of that, make it nice and smooth for when it sits down onto the motor, onto the engine plate that it mounts to on the machine, sorry. So the next part, this is my least favourite thing on a small engine, is putting valve springs back in. My valve spring compressor is way too big for these small engines, but got them in, little retainer clip in the bottom over that little tappet or push rod. Throw the spring in, and I did the rest of this job off camera. Took a little while, messing about with pliers and screwdrivers, getting the valve down. The stem through the top was easy, but then getting that little retainer clip into place was a nightmare. But anyway, she went back together fine, just time consuming. Decided I'd just show you this as well. So this is after, with the new piston rings and those valves back in, did a little comparison again. So that's top dead center there, and you see there's no movement in that piston like there was before, maybe a tiny little bit, but I'm just going to show you that before shot from the previous video when we took it apart, and what it was like when I pulled the cylinder head off. So that's how much movement there was. See that piston rocking around backwards and forwards, that's how badly worn and shot those piston rings were, and just how badly carboned up those valves are. So we've got a huge improvement in 2 areas there. Back to our cleaned up one. Good valve seats, nice and clean, carbon's gone. Moving up and down nicely there, everything's looking really good. So with that all done and taken care of, I think it was about time we got this thing outside and gave it a coat of paint. So that got painted up, made the most of the sunshine. While I was out there, I got a bit carried away with the paint can. I gave the other pieces another coat, but what I hadn't realised was, sitting in the sun, that metal got really hot, and when I put the second coat on, the paint just didn't like it, and it fried up and went all bubbly and crackled and just turned to absolute custard. So sanded all of that back and had to redo it all. Not a major. It still dried off and it was still easy to sand back and get smooth. So this is after another coat and threw that new sticker on. So bit of a jump ahead with getting everything together, but I've shown you putting motors together before on other projects, so I don't think I'll worry about that. The last step with this will be hand painting those head bolts. I'll do all of that right at the very end, probably even once this is back on the machine itself and once it's all ready to go and I know everything's 100% sorted. There's a good chance I'm going to have to take this fuel tank off again. There's a couple of leaks underneath it that I'll need to seal up, or maybe get a internal sealant to put on the inside of the tank. Haven't really decided on that process yet, but turned out looking good anyway. So with that done, it was time to give it a go and start it up. Put a bit of fuel straight in that tank. I hadn't done the old ether or brake clean trick. I knew it was going to run. Well, I knew it ran last time, so probably no reason it wouldn't this time. I'd had a really good spark, so just a bit of fuel in the tank, not too much. I didn't want to overdo it and have leaks or have to get rid of a whole lot of fuel if there were major leaks. So it was just enough, just checking down and then making sure I was up over the filter, up over the outlet. Get the fuel can put back away out of the road. Might have to replace that fuel cap at some stage. It's got a ding in one side and it doesn't really thread down tight, and the cork seal in the top of that doesn't really meet, and it splashes around and a bit of fuel comes out the top. Good little look around the carb there, couldn't see any leaks at that stage. It did leak, unfortunately, eventually, so I ended up pulling the carb apart completely and resealing one of the gaskets in there. So I gave it a few little pulls. Took a little bit of encouragement, but you can just see from that pulling there how much more compression this has got from what it had before. Like I could just easily turn it before. Now there's some resistance. It's got really good compression. Really good compression. You see the fuel starting to leak out of that carb. So I was just keeping an eye on it. It wasn't major, it wasn't pouring it, it was sort of weeping. So back to it, just pulling on it and just trying to gently encourage it. It does come to life eventually, trust me. And this was a little bit frustrating. I was a bit worried it wasn't going to start, but just perseverance with it, checking things, checking the throttle. The fuel mix was quite a way off. But there you go, then it came to life. That was pretty awesome to see. Quite rough, jumping around a fair bit. And I think this is basically just because it's not bolted to a machine, there's no weight holding it in place. I was playing with the throttle up and down, messing around with the idle adjustments. Couldn't really make too many adjustments on that car while it was running. It was just too difficult. So basically you're running, it's sort of doing this thing, bouncing around. A little bit rough. I'm probably going to pull the side cover back off, take the flywheel off and adjust those points down. Points gap could be a little bit too big on that, so we'll have to play with that in the future. So for a first run, not too bad. Got some things to work on there. You can see how hot it got. You know, it started to burn the paint off that new muffler. And going around the carb, you can see there's the join where those screws are. That top gasket's okay, but that bottom one for the fuel bowl, that's where the weep was coming from. Nothing from the fuel line itself, which is great. Just that gasket where the fuel bowl is. So yeah, I end up taking that completely apart again, just checking the needle valve as well in case it was actually overflowing the bowl, but it didn't seem to be. The needle valve in the float chamber seemed okay. Had it up on a bench. Now while it was up there and while I was waiting for it to cool down, I mowed my lawn with the roller mower. So just do a little comparison here for you. 80302, and there's the 58 on the start of that serial number. And here is the blower housing from the roller mower. I broke the rope for the pull start, so I had to take it off and repair it, but managed to scratch back, or just gives us a little bit of a sand. So we've got 80302, you can't really see it on camera there, but 80302 where I'm pointing to there with the serial at the model number, and we've got a 64 at the start of the serial number. So I think in the last video I showed you the magneto and the armatures for the pre-64, so this is the after 64. Same motor, this is on the Olympic roller, and that's back to that 2-leg magneto. So that's sort of a good sign. I've got two motors the same, but 6 years apart. One's 6 years older than the other. So same pull start mechanism. Quick little look at the roller mower here. Yeah, same basic engine. Fuel tank on the different side, different carburetor, different muffler, but the same main component to it. So that's pretty cool. Got everything back together, got it outside, thought I'd give it another go at starting, and here's what happened. So a pretty good overall result, I think. It looks good, it runs okay. I'm still going to adjust those points down and probably still have a little bit of a play with the fuel for the carb. But yeah, I'm really happy. It's looking good. It's ready to go back on the machine. A couple of final little touches, like I said, painting up. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.